Welcome to another edition of Lifting Lowdown, the industry podcast brought to you by Lift and Hoist International. My name is Guy Harris, and I am the publisher of LHI, the magazine servicing the global industrial lifting sector. Regular listeners will know that this podcast does not take the format of a straightforward interview, but invites industry representatives and figureheads to openly discuss leading topics in a relaxed and friendly manner. Apologies for our extended absence of late. However, I am delighted to be joined again by co-host Richard Howes of Bridger Howes, a PR and consultancy firm specialising in the lifting and materials handling sectors. Joining Rich and I in this edition to discuss some of the pressures facing manufacturers and the supply chain as a whole is Steve Napieralski. Steve has been in the lifting and rigging industry for 33 years, 7 years working for a manufacturer of lifting equipment before setting up his own business. In 1995, he started as a manufacturer's representative dedicated to the lifting and rigging industry, and in 2004 founded Oz Lifting. He is a graduate of Winona State University and holds 3 patents. Steve has been affiliated with associations since 1992 with his membership in Associated Wire Rope Fabricators, AWRF. Let's get started. Welcome to another edition of Lifting Lowdown, and it's been a while, so apologies to our listeners. And first of all, welcome back, Rich. How are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Yes, good to be back and get another one done this year. It's been another crazy year, hasn't it, for our listeners, our customers, your readers. So look, and we're going to try and take down another subject here that's been among the numerous obstacles that we're all facing in one way or another. So
indeed,
looking forward to it.
And probably apologies in advance before we get going, because I feel that we're going to tackle an unanswerable question, really, or an unanswerable topic. And a huge welcome to Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hello there, fellas. Good to be here.
Well, it's fantastic to have you on the show, and a warm welcome to you. And thank you for coming on to try and tackle this subject. You do a lot for the magazine, which we're hugely appreciative of, but it felt only right to get you on a Lifting Lowdown, certainly before the close of 2021. So we're going to talk about supply and demand, or should I say demand and supply.
Or demand and lack of supply.
Yes, more accurately. And the supply chain chaos and disruption that we're all faced with, really, and what it's doing in terms of hitting the global economy. So who wants to open?
Well, I'll open by saying I've kind of lumped global supply chain into swear words, right? So when I think of like nasty things that are happening, but I must admit, things are getting a little bit better from our end. We are seeing that, the lead times here when we spoke, I don't know when it was 8 weeks ago, they were shipments out of overseas coming from Asia and the South Pacific were taking 8 to 12 weeks, not necessarily in transit, but just, they get into into the U.S. waters and just have to anchor and wait for an opportunity. But we have seen in the last month, I would say, things getting a little bit better. We're seeing shipments now in the 6 to 8 week category, which isn't terrible, but I think from my perspective, the issue that I'm personally facing with is I'm having to place significantly larger orders because there's still a fear of COVID overseas. There's a fear in my end of running out of product, so it really puts a lot of pressure on us on like how much inventory should we carry, how much cash do we have available. My bank and I are probably best friends, and thank God I got a good bank because they're supporting me. But and then from a business standpoint, I'm booming. I mean, I can't. It's really an unusual year. I've been in this business in the rigging and lifting since 1988, and I really haven't quite seen all these different issues hitting at the same time. And then normally, and now we've got pretty good inflation happening, And, you know, you as a consumer, I'm sure in the UK, you walk into a store and look on the shelf and half of it's bare.
That's very true. That's very true. And, you know, just going back to what you were saying, it does feel like we're in a perfect storm at the moment.
Yeah, I agree.
And I hate using the term unprecedented, but we are in unprecedented times. And you know, COVID seems to be the virus that just keeps on giving. And a lot of this is obviously down to the pandemic. And just before Rich comes in, because I know he wants to, I can see him chomping at the bit there. Steve, it would be remiss of me not to say welcome back, because you recently yourself fell victim of COVID, did you not?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so when I was eligible to get vaccinated, I've got my first vaccine and then followed it up with, I don't know what it was. I think you had to wait 3-4 weeks, and then you got the second one. And so I went on a business trip, kind of a business pleasure trip out to Arizona. I hadn't seen my daughter for over a year because of COVID, and came back, and all of a sudden I was drinking some, I had drinking a little tonic water, and took a drink, and the next thing I know, I didn't taste it. And I went,
Oh dear.
And so then, you know, slowly I started feeling like I was kind of coming down with a cold and really, really tired. And so I went and got tested. Sure enough, I got that Delta variant, and gave it to my lovely wife, Jane. So we both had it. And then came out of quarantine, got my booster. So, you know, I feel like I can't do anymore, right? I mean, I've got 3 Pfizer shots in me. I've had COVID, so I know I've got some of the antibodies. I try and keep my hands clean, and I wear a mask if I feel like I'm in a situation where there's just too many people. But yeah, for the life of me, I can't figure out why people won't get vaccinated. I know I've got no answer for that. I have employees that aren't getting vaccinated, and they have kids in school. And right now, in our city, in our county, COVID rates are on the rise.
Yeah.
You know, so eventually eventually everybody's going to get it, and hopefully, if you're vaccinated, you're not going to be on a ventilator, you know, and taking up a hospital bed.
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's very true. Well, look, welcome back, and I'm glad you're over the worst of it.
Yeah, thanks.
So, Rich, are your shelves in your supermarket looking half empty?
Yeah, well, on occasions, and what's been unusual about this is I think we've kind of all realised how much kind of orchestration there is with global supply chains, haven't we? Because we've all looked at, it's been amazing, like both from a B2B side and in the consumer sector, how many goods and services have been reliant on global supply chains that we just weren't conscious were even impacted by them as such. So I think it's been a bit, it's been eye-opening to us. But I'm encouraged by Steve's opening gambit there. Certainly less than his COVID woes. But I think when we first started talking about this episode, and I was, you know, just talking to people and perusing things on Google as you do, I was finding articles that were saying that this isn't going to stabilize until like 2023, which I thought that was always a bit pessimistic. But in what you're seeing, Steve, in recent weeks, then, are you more optimistic that we're going to get back on track and stay there, say more realistically, the middle part of next year? Would that be realistic?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know, Rich. Sorry. Well, I mean, I can only base my opinion on what I'm seeing, right? What I'm personally seeing.
Sure.
We've done some things where instead of shipping a full container, we're doing LCLs, and the LCL shipping seems to be a little more streamlined than actually filling up a full container. Why that is, I don't know. But the one wild card here, which is so frustrating, is a shipment that I had, you know, pre-COVID or right when COVID was starting to happen, I could get a container to my office here for about $4,500,
Wow.
4,500 US dollars. I just had another one come, same place, same freight company, handed me a bill for $24,000.
What?
$24,000, and I have no recourse. What am I going to tell them? No. So what's happening is, I think these shipping containers, those people are really making a lot of money, because things really haven't changed on their end, right? They load the container, it gets on a boat, it gets shipped over to here in the States. It's either going to go LA Long Beach, or it's going to go to Seattle, or in Canada's sake, it goes to Vancouver. So it's purely supply and demand. The demand is so high, the supply is so low, and they are getting some pretty good margins. And then, then we thought about, well, we can air freight. Well, the air freight people followed suit, right? They're just like, hey, that shipping company is going to make that money. We are too. And then you got the likes of big companies, like Walmart's and these huge companies that have buying power. They're paying premiums to get their stuff on a boat, because it might be related to Christmas, right? Or it might be related to something. And so and I can't play in that arena. I can't keep passing on price increases. So a lot of this stuff I just have to absorb. And but yeah, the cost of freight is really interesting. Yeah.
I think one of the things that's been unfortunate about this is that it's kind of it's playing into the hands of those big conglomerates, isn't it? And it's interesting you talk about Walmart, because somebody was telling me that those guys are literally, they've got the means to charter their own ships and vessels. And that's something that's a privilege reserved for the very few companies at the very top of marketplaces, isn't it? So
Sure. Yeah.
What's been a shame about it is, I think with social media and the ways smaller companies were able to better utilize their flexibility and dynamism to get access to bigger contracts and that kind of thing. This has kind of been a bit of it's offset that again, and it's played into the hands of the bigger companies. So that's one of my anxieties about this, hopefully kind of, getting back on the straight and narrow, is that it just we get that balance back. It just feels at the moment that it's very the favor and the fortune is very much with the larger with the larger companies, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think, I like your point. I think it's been an eye opener for the general public. I don't think people realized how globally we are, and how, components and all that. So I'll give you an example. I'm building a house, probably the worst time in the world to build a house, right? Because prices are high. Yeah. But back in June, I ordered all my appliances. Well, I just got an update that my refrigerator and freezer may be available the end of February, maybe. Wow. And I said, well, what's the problem? They said, it's the foam. They can't get the foam. Like, I don't know where foam comes from, but and garage doors. I ordered garage doors. I can get the doors. I can't get the springs. The springs are an imported product. They're probably sitting in a container somewhere buried in the bowels of Long Beach somewhere.
So what is the root cause of this, do we think? I mean, obviously we've discussed, blasted coronavirus, and now we're all facing a new variant just in time for the holidays. But I mean, is this all down to COVID? I mean, is it down to worker shortages? I mean, would those worker shortages have happened, skilled or otherwise, whether we had the pandemic or not? I mean, is it down to the power shortages in China? Is it down to Brexit in the UK, for example? Is it down to the shortage of hauliers and truck drivers globally? I mean, is it this perfect storm, in fact? Is it a combination of all of these things? What are we thinking?
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. And I just think that it is a perfect storm. You've got people that, at least I can talk about in our country, that don't want to work. They've walked off. They're just not, they refuse to work. And a case in point, my mother-in-law is in a nursing home that we went and visited her yesterday. We have the Minnesota National Guard working. So our governor called out the National Guard, which is, they provide a lot of different services for a lot of different situations. But I never thought I would see a National Guard in a nursing home.
Wow. That's kind of almost scary, isn't it, really?
Isn't it scary? Yeah. And for my business personally, I've been so lucky. We were able to hire a couple of employees here in the last few months, and that are just really good people. And it was like a lot of word of mouth kind of thing here. We live in a fairly small town, and so we've been fortunate. And I tell my guys, every day that how much I appreciate them. And I take as good a care of them as I possibly can. And but it's to your point there, Guy. I don't know. It's just like every time you turn around, there's something coming at you, And
yeah.
And
then there's that cost issue, not just
yes,
to you, but the cost to your customers. And do you feel that you can pass the costs on? Not always. Maybe never. I don't know. I mean, it all depends what kind of relationships you have with your customers, if they're long-standing or if they're new. But that is a massive issue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, big issue.
Are you helped or hindered, Steve, by, just for the benefit of our listeners, you have a distributorship style business model, don't you? So you have local, So how are you helped and hindered by that, and how has that route to market changed or altered, or what does the journey of your product and services look like versus a company that might sell direct to the point of use?
Okay, well, so when I first started my business, this business back in 04, it was strictly an import business. I was bringing products in from China, and but I strategically said in my mind, I do not want to have all my eggs in one basket. And so about 7 or 8 years ago, I started making some products here in the States. I have 3 patents, and those patents are because I listen to people. I've been in this industry my whole career. I knew where there were areas where people weren't addressing situations that were out there. And so I was fortunate that we were able to design some products that are very unique. And so I have a little bit more control over that. Rich, I would say that the challenge on the domestic side has been steel, access to steel. I had 5 steel suppliers. I'm now down to 2 that carry the products that I need. And so prices are supply and demand. I'm
Sorry,
paying a little.
Steve, just to interrupt. Why 5 to suddenly 2? Why is that suddenly decreased so significantly?
Because I think those steel suppliers that I were using just couldn't get it. They just couldn't get access to that type of steel, which is a pipe material for my davit cranes. And so when there's only 2 suppliers that you can go to, where do the prices go? Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and on those cranes, there are a couple of very small imported products that have also caused me grief, because I can't, that's something that I don't have really control over here. I would say that, and I'm not sure I'm answering your question, Guy, Rich, but I would say that I think the benefit of my business is the diversification of applications. My products go into so many different aspects of business, and that you really can't run a plant without some of my equipment. I mean, and a small scale, of course. And so, it was, we chugged right through COVID last year. When I met you at Modex, Rich, that was, as you remember, that's when things were kind of hitting the fan, and people were just panicking, including me. And I thought, well, where's my business going to go? Well, March was not good. April was not good. Then all of a sudden, May, I started creeping out. I ended up having a better year in 20 than I did 21, and 21 is blasting by 20. Just
Okay.
unbelievable. And with all these restraints, it's just incredible. I don't know. I really can't put, I can't put my finger on what's actually going on. But the other thing is, one thing I think of is maybe because I have it and my competitor doesn't, maybe I'm getting the order. I don't know.
Quite possibly, but I speak to a lot of people in the role that I occupy for the magazine and the company, and everyone's saying that they're busier than they ever have been.
Mm-hmm.
And there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of rhyme or reason to it.
I know.
It's an uncanny, strange situation. But I mean, it feels like, the final indignity is you have this issue over getting raw products and components to make the products and then get them into the hands of the people that need them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a better situation than having the product and nobody wanting it.
Well, that's very
Right?
true. Yes, granted, but but a frustrating situation all the same.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking a little earlier about these large entities, and their ability to sort of charter flights and maritime vessels, etc. Do we feel that the situation as it is, or if it continues, and let's hope not, but if it continues in a similar vein, as a result of that, do you think we're going to see an increase in consolidation? And I mean, large industry players buying out smaller companies so they can increase their foothold in the industry and increase their bargaining power. Do you think that's an inevitability out of this mess?
Well, I think it's already been occurring in our industry. I mean, I think you see a lot of consolidation by the big players, and not only from on the supply side, but also on the distribution side. This has been going on for a while now, and I don't know if COVID's going to accelerate that. I know for me personally, in my business, in the last 6 months, I get 3-4 calls a week about if I'm interested in selling.
Okay.
I don't know if that's just random stuff. A couple of them aren't. There are a couple of the inquiries I got are legit players in the lifting and lifting and rigging industry. I'm not ready to. For me, this is like watching when my daughter was born. Right, I saw her as a little girl. I saw her as a young adult. Now I see her as an adult, and I'm proud as hell. And that's kind of how I feel about my business. I'm not going down that road for quite some time.
And sorry, because I know Rich wants to come in, but very quickly, because this question is really connected to the last one. If that's the case, and we do see this consolidation continue to take place, what does that mean for innovation and competition in the lifting sector? In your humble opinion, Steve?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I thought you were
sorry.
right
No,
now.
beg your pardon. In your opinion, and yours too, Rich, of course.
Yeah, well, I think consistently small business are the innovators. I mean, yeah, right. And so I think these big companies, what they offer is a way out for an owner that is getting older, or just they're going to throw a bunch of money at that person, and they're going to walk away. So everybody's got their own individualism on.
Make you an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't really see. I think that there's still a strong small business market here in the at least in the States. And I think if you can solve a problem that no one's solving out there, that's what you have to, that's what I do. I try and do a lot of listening when I'm out and about, because if you listen to the people that use your product, they'll tell you,
Yeah.
So, and I think it's the part of the manufacturer to deliver the product that's needed, that works, that's safe, that's quality. And to think about, I always try and delight my customers. I like to give them something. They open up the box and they go, oh, this is somebody that knows my industry, knows that, hey, you know, I've got a davit base and I put a template in there. Well, now I don't have to lift this big base up and hold it against the wall to drill the holes. I can lift up this piece of paper, right? Tape it to the wall and drill the holes. It's just little stuff like that. It's not rocket science, but it's delighting the customer. On the patented products, that's very difficult because there's a lot of people that have ideas, and they might put it into a patent process, and now I've got an idea that's different, but it's close, and now you got to go through the patent process, and it's a struggle, but it's rewarding when you can say, hey, I've got a patent.
Yeah. Rich.
Yeah, well, just to go in answer to the question about the future of mergers, acquisitions, consolidation, I think that absolutely will continue. I agree with Steve that I think when I first started working in this market, and you would speak to people, that they would say that long before COVID, that actually the marketplace needed some consolidation and resetting to a point. And obviously we've got the upcoming Konecranes and Cargotec merger, haven't we? We've just, your magazine's recently covered the ongoing acquisitions of the Crosby Group, for example. I think a lot of that's going to just continue to be driven by, to pick up on Steve's point, it's what those larger companies or investors can't do that acquisition would enable them to start doing. Timing's a big part of it, and I think I don't think Steve is alone in fielding those phone calls. And I think what a lot of people who the offer that you can't refuse that you alluded to, Guy, that I think that has happened to companies in our sector in recent years. But I think more realistically is they're seeing their businesses grow and potentially now grow at such a rate on an annual basis that there isn't a figure that they could almost, that to get to the offer that's too good to be true is pie in the sky stuff for a lot of companies, because they've come out of a phase of 2, 3, 5% growth and have started growing 10, 20% annually. So it's not the case for everybody, but I think certainly that will impact the extent to which these businesses in gazelle growth can be snapped up. I think what's going to be interesting, I think technology and e-commerce is going to drive some of that trends a little bit as well. I think increasingly, certain technologies and the volume of high-tech equipment that's being bought online might increase in future, where we were all only maybe willing to spend a couple of $100 on an online purchase. We're now prepared to go beyond that and take on more technology via the e-commerce model. So I think that's going to have an impact as well. So yeah, look, I think consistent with the conversation we've been having thus far, there's so many different things that are impacting everything that we're experiencing now, and it's pretty hard, I think, for as hard as it's ever been for kind of forecasters to actually say this is where we're going to be in quarter 2, 3, 4 next year.
I completely agree with that, and it feels like we're kind of in a bit of a brave new world in some respects. I mean, even at grassroots levels, things seem to be changing. Maybe a silly but maybe a significant analogy is the moving away from paper money. I mean, I don't carry cash with me anymore. So what does this mean for? I mean, we're kind of moving on to a different subject now, but I mean, what does it mean for our industry? Technology and automation. Things are shifting. There's a paradigm shift, not just in our industry, but in the world at play. And it does feel like we're on the cusp of something big and different almost.
Yeah, I would agree. And you got to be thinking about, where this industry is going so that you're not left behind, right? I mean, just thinking about all these Zoom calls. I mean, I never was on a Zoom call before COVID hit. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but it was very, very rare. I just get in the car and go see somebody, or get on a plane and go see somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, I think we have to be thinking about, as manufacturers, getting our story out. And how do we do that? Well, the web and different tools, this Zoom. I think as you said, Guy, I think it's all evolving, and it's going to be interesting to see where this shakes out, because I do think that there is a paradigm shift happening.
Yeah.
No,
yeah, I do. I think our industry, though, my sense is, I don't know what you guys think, but my sense of our sector, to throw a blanket over the three of us, if you like, at least in this wheelhouse. I think it seems to rely on a level of humanity and customer friendliness, though. But I do think people appreciate that personal engagement, and there's still a lot of end users that like, I'm sure, Steve, working with your distributors because they've had a partnership and a relationship.
Absolutely.
And there's trust in place, and I think that will endure in our industry more than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
no, I'd agree. Sorry, Steve.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that I would agree with what you said, Rich. I mean, in all the years that I've worked in this industry, and different yet similar industries, that people factor runs high. People like to deal with people. They like to build relationships, long-lasting relationships. Deal with people that they trust, know, and I hope that stands, and I'm sure it will. But I mean, we are starting to run out of time. It's unfortunate, and I kind of feel we may have to re-up here and revisit this. So as the landscape changes in front of us, but let's end on a high if we can. I mean, you're saying, Steve, that from your perspective, internally in the US, things seem to be getting a little better. Yes.
I believe that they are. I'm an optimist. I see the glass half full all the time, and I got to think that as a country that we're going to get back on track. And if my business is the gauge of what's happening, we're good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, from a personal perspective, only because I think the manufacturing industry in the United Kingdom has been decimated over the last 40 years. I'd like to think we may even see an increase of manufacturing firms springing up, and more product being produced locally. So that's supply and demand. Mm-hmm. I mean, okay, you've still got the raw issues, and we all know that a lot of steel is owned by China, and a lot of raw materials are owned by China. So you have that problem to negate. But I mean, let's hope that maybe the world and the supply chain might even shrink slightly and become a bit more regional.
Mm-hmm.
I think people's consciousness as well, Guy, has been raised as to industries like ours. I've never felt that something like lifting or material handling has ever been so visible.
Agreed.
And I think there will be positive legacies of what's been a very dark chapter in history in many ways. But I've never myself seen. I always kind of apologise, honestly, ashamedly, for what I did and what my client base did. Do you know what I mean? But I've never felt more proud of my customer base and the fact that I earn money in this industry. And I think that definitely chimes with some real heightened awareness. And I think that's to take your theme of closing this in a positive light. I definitely think that's a big positive that's come out of all this.
No, definitely. I mean, CEO of Lear and friend of this show, Ross Maloney, keeps on banging the drum. The lifting is everywhere, and it really is. And as you rightly said, Rich, I think we could all stand proud of our industry throughout the pandemic from day one, really, what it did in terms of creating new hospitals, emergency hospitals, transporting emergency equipment, whether it was PPE or vaccinations. You know, it's done an awful lot. Well, look, thank you so much, Steve. And again, thanks, Rich. Your time
Thank you.
is hugely appreciated. Your insights, again, are hugely appreciated. As I say, I do feel that we'll probably come back to this at some point. So hopefully you wouldn't mind coming back on, Steve. And hopefully we're kind of
Love
looking
to.
back at this topic, with some, rose tinted glasses and saying, remember those days versus, oh my gosh, this is still going on.
You bet.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you very
Well,
much for having me.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. It was great to speak to you, and thanks for coming back after the lull that we've had. But Lifting Lowdown is firmly back on track, and there'll be more from us soon. And thanks again, Rich. Your input's always appreciated, mates. And wish you all the best, and I wish you both happy holidays.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Best
for
for
having
both of
me
you.
as always. Yeah, good luck. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, lads.
Yeah,
Cheers
thank you.
now.
It was excellent to catch up with Rich again and produce another episode of Lifting Lowdown before we wave goodbye to 2021. It has certainly been a year not without its challenges, although like the virus they too have mutated and now present us with different obstacles to overcome. Thanks to Rich and of course Steve for sharing their views and experiences. Steve, in his capacity as owner of a lifting equipment manufacturing company, gave us a good insight to some of the issues he and his company currently face. As he looks back at his supply chain, his customers, like everyone else, are looking back at the product supplier. Different parts of the world have experienced supply chain issues that have been exacerbated for different reasons, but the problem, like the pandemic, is global. Once lockdowns were lifted, demand rocketed, encouraging, but before supply chains that were disrupted during the global health crisis had a full chance to recover, they are now faced with further disruptions and are likely to struggle to bounce back in the immediate future. Back in October, a Moody's analytics expert said, "As the global economic recovery continues to gather steam, what is increasingly apparent is how it will be stymied by supply chain disruptions that are now showing up at every corner." What is apparent, however, is that lifting equipment is in high demand and that is unlikely to change. Feel free to leave comments or fire over questions if you have any. Your feedback and suggestions for future editions will enable us to make this podcast even more relevant and interesting. You can keep up to date with the latest industry news by visiting LHI's website liftandhoist.com. I and all at 3H Media would like to wish you happy holidays, calm and joy over this celebratory period. Best wishes for 2022 and we'll see you in the new year. Stay safe.